Okay. Good evening. I'm going to call to order the Policy Subcommittee meeting, and first on our agenda is the proposed revision to the school committee policy for student personal electronic devices. Oh, you want me to? Go ahead, yeah. Actually, before we start, the subcommittee meeting is not a meeting of the whole school committee. Therefore, per open meeting law, only subcommittee members may discuss, deliberate, and vote on matters before the subcommittee. And the subcommittee members tonight for the policy subcommittee is Tina Cahill, Paul Bergoli, and Catherine Hubley. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us here this evening. And I'm very happy to be here to present a proposed update to our student personal electronic device policy. I do need to thank the members of the team, many of which are here today, who helped us research and draft the policy update. Mr. Marani, the curriculum director, Ms. Cavallo, the president of the QEA, Mr. Ellis, vice president of the QEA, Mr. Ford, principal of Quincy High School, and Mr. Gilbert, principal of North Quincy High School. In addition, I would like to thank the Quincy Police Department and Chief Kennedy for their support of this policy update. And in particular, I would like to thank Lieutenant Matt Panizelis, the head of the School Resource Unit, who is here with us tonight. He's also written a letter of support for the members. I would also like to thank the principals and the superintendent's leadership team members who are also here to show their support for this important change. Over the past several years, we have seen a significant increase in the presence and use of personal electronic devices in our schools nationwide. While these devices are an important part of students' lives outside of school, within the classroom, they have increasingly become a barrier to learning, impacting attention, reducing meaningful participation, and contributing to a rise in disciplinary issues. Simply put, when students are connected to their phones, they are often disconnected from their learning. At the same time, Quincy Public Schools has made a strong investment in ensuring that all students have access to appropriate school-issued technology. Every student in grades 4 to 12 has a Chromebook to support instruction when digital access is needed. This allows us to clearly distinguish between technology that enhances learning and personal devices that often detract from it. The proposed approach that you have before you tonight is also supported by research and field experience. According to Cell Phones and Social Media in Schools, a toolkit for school leaders and communities from the Office of the Attorney General, schools that have implemented full-day phone-free policies report that students interact more with one another, are more engaged in their learning, and experience fewer disciplinary issues. Additionally, Massachusetts superintendents have reported that implementing phone locking pouches and other bell-to-bell expectations has led to marked improvements, including increased student attention, stronger peer relationships, and reductions in cyberbullying. In a few minutes, Mr. Marani will be sharing with you an exciting and positive conversation that he had with Taunton High School's principal, who began implementing Yonder pouches this fall. Mr. Marani and I are working with him to schedule a time for our team to visit Taunton High and see how this process works in action. We believe this new policy reflects a thoughtful and balanced approach. It establishes clear expectations, consistent procedures, and a structured system of accountability while still recognizing the developmental needs of our students. By incorporating tools such as secure pouches, along with a progressive discipline model, the policy is designed not only to limit distractions, but also to support students in building responsible habits around device use. Ultimately, this proposal is about creating learning environments where students are fully present, academically, socially, and emotionally. It is about ensuring that classrooms remain spaces for focus, collaboration, and meaningful engagement. And now we'll begin walking through the policy. So the policy begins on the first page with definitions of key terms used. Electronic devices, just to quickly run through the definitions, refers to any personally owned technology capable of communication, internet access, or media use, including phones, smartwatches, and earbuds. Pouches, which you will hear us refer to a lot this evening, are school-issued secure storage tools that restrict access to devices during the school day. This policy also outlines a progressive discipline approach, which emphasizes teaching and accountability through escalating supports and consequences. Additionally, it defines terms such as social probation and phone probation, which limit student privileges or device access when expectations are not met, as well as access-enabling devices, which are items used to bypass or undermine the policy, such as burner phones. These shared definitions are intended to ensure a common understanding for our school community. On page 2, the policy then moves on to explain that for high school students, the following will occur, starting in the fall. Cell phones and other personal electronic devices may not be used for any purpose from the start of the school day until dismissal. Number 2, all cell phones and personal electronic devices must be turned off, not simply silent or vibrate mode, throughout the duration of the school day. Number 3, cell phones and other personal electronic devices should be placed and locked in the provided pouch upon entry into the school and until dismissal from school. Students are expected to adhere to the process described in the daily procedures below. And now I will turn it over to Mr. Marani, who will talk about the procedures.
Thank you, Dr. Perkins. Good evening, everybody. So when we look at the daily procedures as it's written in this proposed policy language, I do just want to point out that I'll be referring to the high school section of this policy. The middle school language is very, very similar, so I will point out where it's slightly different. We obviously needed to make adjustments to make it middle school appropriate as compared to high school appropriate. So I'll point that out. However, a lot of it is similar language, so I won't go through each one verbatim. So at the high school level, prior to entering the school building, students will be responsible for turning their phone off, placing their electronic devices inside their secure pouch. They'll secure it in front of school staff. If they have headphones that can't fit in the pouch, they would be expected to place that in their backpack. And then throughout the day, those headphones would not be visible throughout the school day. And then the final piece upon entering is all students would be responsible for carrying or storing their pouch. So they're still responsible for their cell phones the same way they would be anyways, only now it's in a pouch and they carry it with them, whether it's in their backpack, their locker, it would be the decision of that student. Now, as students exit the building on the way out, they will have their pouch unlocked. Now, that process requires their small little items that essentially can quickly scan the pouches. So as students walk by, it's literally a half a second, and they can click it, and it unlocks. They don't need the device to lock it. They can lock it, but if they need to unlock it, there's a separate device that they would be using, which again, that would be managed by staff. So there would be staff oversight when that's happening. And there's quite a bit of those devices that we have. So we can have multiple points, whether it's at the main office, if there's an early school dismissal, other extenuating circumstances that might occur. There's not just one location where this would be accessible, but regardless of where it is, it would be managed by a QPS staff member or more. And I do want to mention that on their way out, we are telling students to close their pouch on their way out and keep it locked on their way out, mainly because what we don't want to do is have them leave anything in there overnight and then accidentally lock it in, right? So if they close it on the way out, and this was advised from the Yonder company as just a nice practice to help avoid any issues when students, head home or head out of the school. So they would unlock their pouch on the way out, they'd remove their electronic devices, and then as I mentioned, they would close it and take the pouch with them. So the pouches would be assigned to the individual students. So there would be a pouch per student. And then I do just want to add that, the language I shared with you is intentionally zoomed out because we recognize that across the 5 middle schools and the 2 high schools, there's different building logistical needs. And so there would be further information in terms of specific instructions as applicable in each school in those relative handbooks. So that is by design, this is the general overview, but part of the purpose that, Dr. Perkins just mentioned when we go to visit Taunton High School is we can look at how they facilitate the process, get some tips and some best practices from them, and see how that could impact Quincy High School, North Quincy High School, Point Webster, the other middle schools. So again, that's something we're considering as we move forward is, do we want to make this available via different entry points, or do we want to put them in one entry point? Those types of questions would be answered school to school to school because of the needs of the building. So staffing, amount of students, current practices in terms of entry. What I will say is that the Yonder company that produces the pouches, they do work with schools from a consulting standpoint to help us develop the procedures within the resources and the facilities that we have. And so it is a pretty smooth process. And what I will share, my conversation with the principal over at Taunton, and I do need to thank him, his name is Dr. John Harrison. They have about 2,800 kids in their high school, and they are doing the same thing in that they assign individual Yonder pouches to every student. They bring them home with them. They come back in the morning with their Yonder pouches, and they have a similar process upon entry where they're locking them in their devices, locking their devices in their pouches on the way in, and in a similar manner on the way out, unlocking, taking their items out, and locking it again. So from a procedural standpoint, it's absolutely feasible for a school with 2,800 students, and I believe it's feasible for every one of our schools. Again, when we look at the building design and making sure that we obviously design it in a way that's effective. I do just want to point out in my conversations with the principal, because beyond logistics, I just needed to ask him, what do you think? You're in year one, how's it going? And he said it's absolutely paying dividends already. So specifically, the suspension rate as compared to this time last year is down significantly. He asked me not to share the specific percentage numbers publicly, so I'll respect that, but down significantly. Physical altercations, again, I would love to be able to share it, but a massive decrease in physical altercations in that school since this started. When I asked him, have there been any other changes that possibly could be correlated to these numbers here, he said, this is the only major change we saw from last year to this year. So of course, you can't necessarily directly relate it to this change, but this is a pretty significant change, and it certainly is much more than a coincidence. And then the other piece from a more qualitative standpoint was, one, teachers are not seeing the cell phones in class at all. So we're seeing kids focusing, staying in the classroom. They're not leaving the classroom to maybe sneak their phone out to look at it while they use the restroom, right? Things like that. That's happening much less. And quite honestly, they're just not seeing the phones. It doesn't mean there aren't kids who are trying to find ways around that. But as I'll go through in our policy language that we're proposing tonight, we're addressing that as well. We understand that not everybody's going to subscribe to this right away. We understand that we're going to work with kids. We're going to develop language and systems that address that. But overall, he spoke very highly of this, very, very encouraged. And I said flat out, if you had to do it again, if you could walk away from this right now and not do it, would you? He said, absolutely not. This has been a pivotal change in our school community. And so we hope to bring that to QPS. Shifting gears to some of the language around damaged and lost pouches. So I'll just review that language very, very quickly. Again, similar to middle school, I'll point out the slight differences. So if a pouch is lost, ripped, cut, torn, or damaged, or if it's opened in any way other than what's prescribed by the district, there's two outcomes. The first is the student and their caregiver is responsible for purchasing a new pouch. Now that rate will be established by the district and made available in each student's handbook. So obviously we're at the mercy of the price point that we purchase these Yonder pouches at. So they could change over time. So we don't recommend offering a specific price point in the policy because it could change year to year, potentially. There's no intention of that, but we just want to be prepared. And then also the student shall serve a detention from 2:30 to 3:30 the following day. So again, this is if it's damaged or lost pouch. They'll serve a 1-hour detention the following day, and they will not be permitted to attend clubs, sports, dances, and other extracurricular activities for that day. I do just want to point out the only difference at the middle school level is the detention is a half hour shorter. So it's 2:30 to 3 o'clock For a forgotten pouch, if a student forgets their pouch, so it's not lost, but they just forgot it a particular day, their phone would be collected in the high school, in the dean's office, middle school, in the main office, and there will be a call home to the parents or guardians, just reminding them of the policy. The phone would be returned to the student at the end of that day. So at dismissal, the phone would be returned. Now, if a student consistently forgets their pouch, it would be considered lost, and then at that point, we would just defer back to the damaged lost pouch policy language that you have up there. Finally, as Dr. Perkins mentioned, the combination of the pouch, but also the progressive discipline piece. That's obviously a big factor here for this to be effective. So I'll just quickly go over this, and I would say there's definitely different language in the middle school section of this, so I'll go over that as well a little bit more thoroughly. The first violation, so if a student is using the phone during the school day or not using the pouch, the first violation is an office referral. That cell phone, or wherever you see cell phone, electronic device, would be collected by administration. The parents or guardians would receive a phone call, and that student would serve 2 one-hour office detentions, totaling to 2 hours of detention. For the second violation, again, office referral, cell phone is collected by administration. However, now there's a meeting with parents or guardians to discuss this, and the student would be serving a three one-hour office detentions along with a Saturday detention as well. Now, at this point, this would be in addition to students may needing to serve a period of social probation, which it's defined in the definitions earlier in the language, as determined by school administration. The third violation, very similar in language, however, now it's entering a one-day in-school suspension along with a Saturday detention, and that student would be placed on a phone probation. Again, that term is defined earlier in this policy language. Once we hit that third violation, anything beyond that would be considered a chronic violation. So at that point now, it would be a combination of in-school or out-of-school multi-day suspensions, and the student would be placed on both social and phone probation for a duration determined by the principal. The last piece I want to mention, that bottom piece, is that if there's students using burner phones, second phones, whatever they might have to try and kind of get around this policy, any evidence of that would put a student on the third violation. So if they don't have a history of violations, but they're seen putting a burner phone in their pouch and they have another phone and they're observed using it, that student would be addressed via the third violation. If they do have a history, they would go right to chronic violations in terms of the disciplinary response if seen using these access-enabling devices. Now, shifting gear, if you go to the last page, I just want to compare that to the middle school discipline because it is significantly different. So up until that point, the language at the middle school level is pretty similar. It's where it starts to differentiate is at the discipline level. So I do just want to quickly go over that. A first offense at the middle school level, the phone would be brought to the main office, held by administration. A phone call would be made home, and it would be returned to the student at the end of the day. That's the first offense. The second offense, it's very similar. The difference is here is a parent or guardian would be responsible for retrieving the phone. So we would still be calling home, but at this point now we'd be handing the phone off to the parent or guardian to be able to make sure that they're aware that this is against our policy. And finally, the third offense, same as the second offense above. However, the student would be prohibited from that point bringing any personal electronic devices to school for the remainder of the school year. So in other words, if this offense continues to occur, we just need to remove that device from that student as an option for that school day. And then I do just want to mention, students committing repeated violations of this policy may be subject to additional disciplinary actions consistent with the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. When you look at middle school and you look at students in grade 6 and you look at students at grade 8, even though they're close in age, they're very different developmentally, and therefore some discretion needs to be considered when additional consequences are issued for this behavior. So that's why the language is worded in the way that it is. And finally, elementary students, there are no changes in the language, so we'll continue on with the language as it says for elementary school students. Cell phones and other personal electronic devices should be turned off, safely secured in a locker or backpack during the school day. So there's no changes there. And if I could just offer one final thought before I hand it back over to Dr. Perkins, similar to how we handled the recent shift with the attendance policy, we really unified as a community and said, how do we address attendance? And we did that via the Attendance Matters initiative as a response to the shift in the attendance policy. I think we can all agree it's been very successful. We've seen our attendance data improve already. We're very excited to see the direction that's going in. But we absolutely intend on taking a similar community-based approach. It's very, very important to us that we share this responsibility. Parents, guardians, schools, all of us here, it's very important that we do this. We really just need to prioritize the mental wellness of our students, and having phones easily accessible might hinder that. And so therefore, it's something that's very important to us. We want to create a school community that's focused, connected, and engaged. And I have to just thank everybody for their attention to this policy, because it creates a great opportunity for us to help the school community throughout. I'll hand it back to Dr. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Marani. I would just echo what Mr. Marani has said and just say that, this is something that was brought to our attention initially from the teachers in the classrooms, from the QEA. I think that this shows that we hear them and that we support them, because we are all too often, and I think the principals could tell you this, putting the teachers in the position where they have to argue with a student over their phone. And at the high school and the middle school level, that is not a fun place to be. Teachers should be focused on teaching their classes, and the students should be focused on learning. And Mr. Marani is right. I don't think anybody would argue about the information that is now available about the damage that the reliance on cell phones does to children. The access to social media, just in general, their overall mental health, the addiction that they form to their phones, and so we really feel strongly that this is a step in the right direction to make our schools, to improve our school culture, to improve our community and our climate, and make it a place where everybody comes together and kids talk to each other. Mm-hmm. They are not on the phones walking down the hallway or sitting at lunch all at a table staring at their phones. The kids actually are engaging with one another. And so we have just a short little video clip to show you of what could potentially look like when students enter the building. This is from Yonder itself, so you can just kind of see what it may look like in action.
Yonder is the established leader in creating phone-free schools. For over 10 years, our product and program has allowed students to experience the focus, creativity, and relief that comes from a phone-free school day. As students enter school, they place their phone in their assigned Yonder pouch. They close and secure their pouch, keeping it with them throughout the day. When leaving school, students tap their pouch on an unlocking base to retrieve their phone. Yonder is used by millions of students every day. Our school partners report having more teaching time in the classroom, improved student safety and wellness, better student engagement, student behavior, and academic performance. Creating phone-free schools is a community initiative. Our comprehensive program provides support to our school partners from start to finish, with step-by-step guidance, parent communication materials, policy development, and proven expertise to ensure everyone understands the difference a phone-free education can make.
It's amazing to see kids come to school and not have to worry about that phone going off or them being bullied by someone else on social media.
It was kind of annoying at first, but then I saw the difference between my old school and this school.
I see more people interacting rather than being on their phones, especially at lunchtime and break time. They are way more engaged, everyone's happier.
It's night and day. I saw kids' faces again.
So we are all here to answer questions that you may have about this proposal. We're really excited for, what we think that this will do for our school communities, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Just to make sure I have the right. First of all, can I have a Yonder pouch? Because.
Absolutely.
And as human beings, we know that phones are distracting, and I can only imagine what it's like in the schools. And I think that, and before I open it up to them, my colleagues, is that, our role as a school committee is to support kids so that they're learning and they're in a safe environment, right? But it's also to support our teachers so that they're able to teach, and there's nothing more frustrating than trying to get content out to kids and they're not paying attention. You could be in a meeting even in work, and people at board meetings and at meetings are on their phones. And if you're trying to relay content and no one's paying attention, it's you feel like you're swimming against the tide. So for me, I feel like 100% this is the direction we should be going in. I know we have other questions that we're going to be addressing. But coincidentally, just weirdly, I had a phone call from a school committee member in Taunton yesterday. And we were talking about another issue. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, wait a minute, do you guys have that Yonder packet? That's who we're talking. She went, bullying down, grades up, suspensions down, fights down, no cheating, students working together, engaged and attentive. Like in 2 seconds, all came out, all their reporting shows those statistics. So she was raving about it. So I'm happy that we have them as a source to see how it's working for them. Mr. Pagoli.
Thank you, Ms. Gale. When we initiated this policy several years ago, it was something that was new to everybody, and we certainly stumbled a little bit, but I think our intentions were the right ones. And with this particular program that we're being introduced to tonight, it sounds like that we're going to be able to get over that hump and actually make some progress to support our teachers and to also support our students. I have a couple of questions quickly. In terms of the cost for the pouches for the district,
Yep.
what would you guesstimate, or what is the cost of each pouch? Do you
So
have that?
it's $30 per pouch. And then with that, so we did ask, it's about $100,000 for the high school, and it would be an additional $100,000 for the middle school. You do factor into that some cost for to have extra on hand because if kids lose it or new kids enter the building. But I will say that is pretty much a one-time cost. There is some cost the next year because you have to order replacements, but it's not like that because you do reuse the pouches unless, they get dirty and gross but you can clean them. But so, you would need to order some new ones every year, but the major cost is the initial cost.
Right. So the cost is not directed at families and students, it's the district responsibility.
It would be the district
correct?
responsibility. It would only be if the students, purposefully broke it, which, sometimes that happens, and they try to break it so that it will pop open so they can get their phone out. So occasionally they do, they will damage it. And so if they purposefully damage the pouch, or, obviously we're going to help anyone, even if they lose it and they can't, afford a replacement, we're going to give it to them. But if they're a chronic offender, we may have a different conversation. But so it would be $30 to replace a pouch that was damaged or lost.
And that charge goes to the
That would
family?
be to the family. It would be similar to how we handle the Chromebooks. So if the Chromebooks are if there's a purposeful or irresponsible kind of damage to the Chromebook, then we do charge families to help with the cost of repairing it. But it would be a similar process.
Okay. And maybe you can answer it, or a superintendent can answer, where is the money going to come from?
So we are exploring possible business partnerships at the moment, but if the business partnership angle does not work, we would be asking for it to be added to the, or be a part of the school budget, not only for the initial expense, but also for any replacement costs moving forward. The initial expense of 200,000, as Dr. Perkins said, would be the biggest expense. And then the preceding years would cover essentially the replacement costs for necessary pouches for new students and for lost or damaged pouches. But we are exploring potential various partners in the city that may be interested in supporting this initiative for our students.
Now, we've had difficulty recovering Chromebooks for people who have left the system. What would be the protocol for recovering these pouches?
Well, I think we do the same thing. We'd keep trying to get it from them. You know, I mean, Chromebooks, you have the benefit we can actually shut it off, so that they can't use it. Obviously, the pouch is really no good to anyone if they don't have the magnet to open it.
Yeah.
So we would try to get it, and we would, before the child signed out of school, that like they turn in their books, you know, we would make them turn in their pouch.
Yep.
But, you know, occasionally I'm sure that there are going to be some students that walk away with it, probably not purposefully, but just forget to return it or whatever the extenuating circumstances.
Right.
We have a great track record of making sure our Chromebooks get back before a student moves on, so as
Follow
Dr.
the same
Perkins said, we
process.
would
Yeah.
do something very similar.
Well, what I like about this is that we have data now that we can hang our hats on and point to it and say, look, because of this, this is happening. And it's a positive result for, again, teachers and students. And we had nothing before in that regard. We just said, no, you can't do it because we suspected cheating, we suspected videotaping, we suspected yada, yada, yada. And now we have the data to back that up. One last question. We do have grade 5 in middle school. Are those kiddos considered middle school, or are they considered elementary in terms of the discipline?
So they would be considered elementary, and so we have separated, so they would follow the same process, which it's not allowed. You know, it would go in when we got the quote, I believe we got it for 6 to 12.
Correct.
Yeah, so we did separate them, so they would follow the elementary policy. They follow the elementary for everything else. They follow the schedule, an elementary schedule, elementary half-day schedule. Everything they do follows. They use the same curriculum as all of the other elementary students. So we would continue to treat them as elementary students, which is what they are.
Well, thank you for putting this forward. It's just, it just makes me hopeful.
Yeah, I have to thank all of them. I mean, everyone's worked really hard on it.
Yeah. And we have something from the police department to,
Sure. Any specific question?
no, I just want to know what you think.
I have a question for you.
Oh, sorry, Tina.
So in terms of, you know, I was going to say probably one of the questions we're going to hear from parents on the parent side. Obviously, we have the support of our principals and the SLT here tonight. And once we roll this out, we're probably going to get some communication from parents, and they want to, you know, if I have to get in touch with my child or not, and if there's an emergency. From my perspective, I think that if students are calling their parents when there's something happening, it causes more confusion and chaos in the community, in the school building. So from your perspective, can you kind of give us an idea of what you think?
Sure. So the research that I've done over the last couple of weeks pointed to the same thing, that it has a tendency to overwhelm first responder response. So I would agree with that. I think I'm in favor of this as a parent myself. I think we've done quite a bit of training with the Quincy Public Schools in terms of threat assessment and active shooter response. We've done training, tabletop. We did a practical exercise last year. It was awesome. So we have policies and we've done training, so we're well prepared to deal with those emergencies. But with the research that I've done, I think kids having cell phones would hinder that response and possibly divert resources. I'm in full favor of this. I think it's great.
Okay. Let me to follow up with that, if you don't mind, Dr. Perkins. So let's talk about a little bit of communications with parents.
Yes.
And students communicating with their parents, and how do we address that?
So you mean, so in an emergency or just in
Well,
general?
I prefer, to be honest, the woman I was talking to in Taunton, the school committee member, she has a student that's at the, one of the vocational schools, and then she has a son that's at the high school. So her son actually thinks it's great as well, that he's, everything's going pretty well in school. Her daughter that's in the vocational school can use her phone, and she's texting me, like, what's for dinner tonight?
Right.
Can we get our nails done after school today? Things like that. And so she's distracted all day with her phone. But in terms of, needing to get in touch with your parent, we don't need the students to do it directly from their phones in the classroom.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So we did put a section in the policy that's called additional guidelines. And in there, we did put a provision for if, a student really needs to talk to their family, which I will say we do at the other levels, like elementary and middle school right now. Kids go to the office if they need to call their parent for something. So if a child, needed to talk to their family for whatever reason, we would have them go to the office. They would be absolutely allowed to call their parent. They would be provided with a private space if that was necessary. And if a parent called and needed to talk to their child, we would get their child. And we would have their child come down and talk to their family. So we wouldn't, prohibit a student from, if they needed to talk to their family, they would have that ability to talk to their family. It would be just like doing it back in the day when you had to use a landline.
When we used to do it.
And not text. And I would just say with Lieutenant Panizelis, I completely agree. And just having lived through an experience, and I'm sure Mr. Ford can also attest to this, when we did a few years ago have a bomb threat at Quincy High School, and the absolute chaos it caused for students because they were texting their families. I know a similar situation happened at North Quincy High School a few years ago. Misinformation gets out there online. People are talking about it on Facebook. They're spreading information that was actually incorrect, and also that puts students' safety at risk. Saying what is happening in the school when we have an emergency is not actually helpful. It actually puts the children in a bigger risk and the school staff in a bigger risk. And then never mind the dismissal, trying to keep track of where the students were when parents were trying to pick them up. And if it God forbid was a real emergency, first responders would be trying to get to the scene and the parents would be jamming it up. And I am a parent. I absolutely I understand, how serious this is and how scary that can be. But we all have a job to do, and our job is number one to keep children safe, and we have to make sure that our procedures and policies are such that when we need Lieutenant Panizelis to the school, we're making way so that Lieutenant Panizelis can get to the school, because he's the one that is going to make the situation better, as are the Brewster ambulance and the firefighters and all the people that need to be there. And that's what keeps students safe.
I think when you mentioned too, if parents are coming and picking up their students, you're going back into the building, you don't know who's even there and who's not there.
Right.
Which is also a
We
safety
cannot keep
issue.
track of
You can't
them.
keep track
Yep.
of, someone might be missing, maybe somebody, so I think that's an important piece to understand too.
If I could just switch gears for 1 second.
Yeah.
I was an SRO for a couple of years before I was promoted. And over the last 3 years, I was the commander of the Special Investigations Unit. So the amount of damage that I have seen firsthand in terms of bullying, harassment, non-consensual videotaping. Some of these cases have been absolutely damaging to some of these kids. They're humiliating, and I've seen that firsthand. And I think that's another side of it. I think you're going to see a huge reduction in those types of cases. So,
Yeah, hope so.
sure.
Thank you. Mrs. Hubley.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. And I wanted to say thank you to Dr. Perkins for taking my phone call and answering all of my questions. It was great to hear.
You're very welcome.
And it was great to hear that Ms. Cavallo actually helped with the writing of this. That was very, very happy to hear that our teachers are on board and they're supportive of this plan. So that was very good to hear. I'm glad they're on board. I've been talking with school committee members throughout the state, through MASC, who've been using Yonder bags for a long time and having great success with them. So I'm totally in favor of it. I did have a couple of questions that came up during the presentation, though. If you could elaborate a little bit more on students who have IEPs that have accommodations that would include their cell phones. That would be
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And so I think one of the things that we realized after the fact, and thank you for the conversation because you kind of brought it to light, was that we probably do need a sentence in there about students that need accommodations. And it's actually in the model language from the state. So we'll add that for when this goes hopefully to full committee. And so that would be a decision of the IEP team. I can't really think of off the top of my head a situation that would require an accommodation of a cell phone for an IEP, but never say never. There might be some extenuating circumstance. And in that instance, it would be discussed at the IEP team meeting, put in the IEP, and then that student would be, eligible for that accommodation. The one area, and I did talk to Andrea about this, Hewer, is I do think we need to add that in there because of students with diabetes. And so I mistakenly was under the impression that they would use an iPad, which they do use an iPad, but the cell phone has to swipe the glucose monitor and then it talks to the iPad. So I do think that we would need, accommodations for children like that, because currently I think we have, maybe 20 students in the district who do use a glucose monitor like that through the phone.
Okay, great. And also, you mentioned that you'd be going to Taunton to check out what they're doing. Will Mr. Gilbert and Mr. Ford have the opportunity to go and check out firsthand how Taunton is?
They will
helping
absolutely be invited to go. Yep.
Awesome, because
Yeah.
that would be really reassuring that they have that experience to be able to see firsthand what's going on and it's going to be in their schools. So
And they can speak with the principal to principal.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So also, in the discipline, I believe you said, Ms. Wright, that you said about middle school having a detention as a possibility of, would that be under the last line of because I don't see detention anywhere in here specifically, so would that be under disciplinary actions?
Sure, that
a
would be, if you
possibility?
go to the damage and loss pouch language, the second bullet point, the student shall serve a detention from 2:30 to 3 p.m. the following day and shall not be permitted. So that's if the pouch is damaged or lost.
Oh, okay, so it's not under the discipline.
So that,
okay.
correct. So that's a specific response to the damage or loss pouch per this language. And then obviously we have the discipline language that's if they're using the phone or if they're not using their pouch, then we would respond in this progressive manner.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Thank
Sure.
you. And also with the funding still being looked for, what is the implementation? When are we thinking this is actually really gonna?
We would
happen.
love to implement this in September.
Okay.
So that would be our goal. And the company, the reason why we liked and we decided, and we talked round and round about different options, what made the most sense in our team. And the reason why we liked the Yonder product the best is because they are working with 40 schools, districts in Massachusetts. They do come to the school. They provide professional development to all the teachers. They've done this, as you said, for years and years. and they have proven results, and they also will come and watch your arrival and dismissal. That's built into, kind of like your cost, that they will come, they will do PD for the entire staff, they will watch the arrival and dismissal and give you feedback on changes that you need to make to your procedures. They do recommend, and all of this comes with it. The magnets all come. They have portable magnets that can be pushed around if you need it. So one could be left in the office, but it could be moved to the dean's office if it was needed. They recommend one magnet for every 150 students, but they give you more than that. You saw in the video they have little handheld ones that the security officers could carry around in case of an emergency. So all of those things, we would have, we wouldn't be, I don't want people to think there'd be this big log jam, because that's not what would happen. We would have multiple, magnets to lock the devices. So, kids wouldn't have to it wouldn't be like they would have to necessarily wait in line. With that being said, I do think that the first week or two that we implement this, it's probably going to be figuring out and tweaking, how to get it going as quickly as possible. But I do, everything that we've heard and from all the schools that we've heard, that we've talked to, and the Yonder people, it takes about a week or two to get used to it, and then it's pretty much smooth sailing and very few incidences. You're always going to have kids who are going to try to beat the system and put a fake phone in the pouch, or pretend the pouch is locked or something like that.
Yeah.
It's going to happen, and so we'll work with those families and address that.
Thank you. That's all I have.
I think the visit to Taunton will be good too, because did you say they have 2,800 students?
Yes.
So
yeah.
seeing how they're coming in and coming out and how they manage that's probably going to be a big thing. And actually having the extra magnets for maybe the nurse's office or other places where the student might have to get into their pouch. My last thing would be that we're going to need, I would think that we're going to need to have some strong communication with parents.
Yes.
Before the school year starts in regard to, the discipline, the loss and damage of the pouches. And maybe some communication, because you're probably going to have questions about parents being able to communicate with their kids and give them a good understanding of why it can cause problems if there's too much communication, during the day and distraction, but also for safety measures and how we deal with things in terms of safety measures or communication with each other. But I think for me, my only other, hopefully we get the funding for this. If we don't get the full funding, what is your expectation if we only got like $100,000? Would we?
We would absolutely recommend that we focus on the high schools.
On the high school, okay. So hopefully we'll get it all. We'll do what we need. Mr. Golding? Yep.
Question. For students who are participating in after-school activities, for example, a kid has to jump on the bus after school, not for an evening game, but for an afternoon game at Whitman-Hanson. Where do they go to get their phone?
So they're carrying the phone with them all day?
Yeah.
So they would just unlock it and at one of the magnets.
Okay, so
So
they're,
right when they'll be right at the entrance and
Okay.
and the exits,
right.
So they would just unlock it before they left the building and take the phone out and then close the bag again. And somehow we lost it in the edits. We had a sentence about after school activities, so we're gonna put that back. We caught that today, that somehow or other we lost that sentence, but we did have a sentence about, that it would be, we'd work with the coaches and our idea would be that the phones would be out at a sport or a club or whatever, we're not going to restrict the access after school, unless there's a problem, and there's some kind of issue with the phone, then of course we would work with that coach or that club leader or, to work with that family, and we could potentially, use the pouch for the after-school club if we needed to. But that would be, I would think, pretty rare and based on working with a family.
Who monitors the magnet? Is it
would
just
be-
there? And
Well,
say-
so it would be the security staff, and the school security. the deans, the administrators, those would be the people. At the beginning, we probably would need some assistance with, some of the other school staff, like guidance, maybe potentially, or educators, especially like the first 2 weeks. But then after that, and we'll work with the QEA on that, to make sure that that all works smoothly. But after that, we don't anticipate needing really anyone else.
So a kid just couldn't walk up and swipe it?
No, because it would be right where the school security sits. That's where the magnets would be. And Mr. Bergoli, good question. You can cover the magnets. There's a magnet box that flips over that you can lock, and you can cover the magnet. So we can do that.
Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they've thought of everything.
Okay. Oh, yeah, this is you.
Just have to be devil's advocate on this. This isn't something they can go on Amazon and get some kind of a magnet that would work just as well.
Well, we asked him that, and I think, there's always kids that are savvy and that potentially, probably you could, but this is their copyright. So when they monitor, their staff does monitor Amazon, and when they see something like that pop up, they have them take it, they have a cease and desist. They have attorneys or whatever that deal with that. So they do monitor like the market space, because this is their product. And, I'm not going to say it could never happen that a student could find something like that, but they do monitor it and make sure that, like that doesn't happen.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Just on that too, the student would be subject to disciplinary action.
Absolutely, yes.
That's
Yes.
the access enabling device or tool. That's essentially what that provision in the policy is referring to. As we did anticipate potentially there would be a tool online that a student could get to access the pouch, but that would then cause a disciplinary intervention.
Okay, thank you.
And therapy for addiction.
Yeah, I need that.
Surely.
Okay.
Motion to approve to move.
Yes.
Motion to approve to move to the main meeting.
Second by Mr. Bergoli.
Just an all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Lieutenant. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Next on our agenda, we have the Quincy School Committee meeting dates for 2026-27. Do we have a discussion or any questions? Mrs. Hubley?
Am I on? Okay. I just wanted to say thank you to Laura Owens for putting this together very wonderfully. This is something that Mrs. Lebo and I had heard of being done by lots of school committees at Mass Association of School Committee meeting a while back, and felt it would be extremely valuable for us to have this type of agenda for our framework, and knowing what our meetings would be. I mean, obviously, there's going to be opportunity to add to our meetings if there's something that comes up, but this way we have a general knowledge of what's going to happen. So I'm very thankful, so thank you so much.
So, motion to move.
Motion to move to the main meeting for
Second by Mr.
discussion?
Bergoli. Sorry, Bergoli. Bergoli. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next on the agenda, we have the 2026-2027 QPS school calendar. I would like to ask Mrs. Owens if we've had any major changes to the calendar this year?
Nope, it's the same format as the previous years.
Okay, same format. So what we have here is our school calendar for next year. The first day of school is September 8th, and the last day of school, and I don't have my glasses on here, but is June, what's the last day?
Last day of school, 23rd.
June 23rd. Added 5 days for, if we were to have snow days, then it would push it out to June 30th, if we were to have snow days next year. On the calendar, we have designated H for holidays or for contractual holidays, and V for vacation, and E is for election day. Other than that, I think we are all set. Any questions? Mrs. Hubley?
Thank you. I just have a few things that I would like to ask to be added, just for clarification purposes. On the calendar, it says on Election Day, it says professional staff PD. I think it would be better for public to have it say staff professional development instead of PD, just so it's clear as to what that day is for. Also, on February 15th, it just says no school. I believe it's President's Day, so I believe we are having no school because of President's Day, which is the holiday. And the same thing for in April, where it says the 19th is an H, it's Patriots' Day, so which is a state holiday. So we should put in Patriots' Day and no school, since we're honoring the state holiday on that as well.
Okay, I'm sorry, so to say it, since both of those fall in the vacation week, that's the format we have been using, just referring to them as vacation days. So if you want me to make that change, that's.
Just because it is there's a V and there's an H, so I just feel like it should be clarified as to what the H is that we have off, that it's a federal holiday and a state holiday, that we should list what it is. Just my opinion, if my colleagues disagree with me, happy to,
It's fine.
just for, make it. And Mr. Leung had asked us to look at putting an H on February 6th for the Lunar New Year, and I'm bringing that up for discussion because it was asked of us. But my personal opinion is that I don't think it's equitable to do that, since we're not doing that for all the other holidays that we have down under major and religious cultural holidays. So I would be in disagreement of doing that, but I am making sure I bring it up for conversation. Anyone?
I would
And
say-
that's all I had.
We have, H is for federal, state, and municipal holidays. So that's how I would leave it. Mr. Bergoli, any questions, any concerns?
Nope.
All set? Can we have a motion to move the calendar out of subcommittee to the main meeting?
Motion to move out.
Mrs. Hubley, second. Mr. Bergoli, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next on our agenda, we have the proposed revision to school committee policy, school day. This policy basically has just been customized from the MASC school policy, school day policy, and we just customize it for Quincy language. There really isn't much change here. Is there any questions?
Just clarification. So all we're doing is we're just changing it from, it says Tuesday to now we're having Wednesday.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Nope. That's all.
Mr. Bergoli, any questions?
No.
No.
Motion to move
Motion,
the
Ms.
main
Hubley,
meeting?
second, Mr. Bergoli, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Policy meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have,
All right, I'd like to call the 6 p.m., which now a little later than that, 6 p.m. Athletics and Wellness Subcommittee to order. Record here, this subcommittee meeting is not a meeting of the whole subcommittee. Therefore, for open meeting law, only subcommittee members may discuss, deliberate, and vote on matters.
Is that that one? Sorry about that. All right, so we're going to do that all over again. So I want to call to order the 6 o'clock Athletics and Wellness Subcommittee to order. I'm just going to read this into the record. The subcommittee meeting is not a meeting of the whole subcommittee, school committee. Therefore, per open meeting law, only subcommittee members may discuss, deliberate, and vote on matters before the subcommittee. The subcommittee members for the Athletics and Wellness Subcommittee are myself, Mr. Paul Baroli, and Mrs. Tina Cahill. And first on the agenda tonight is Mr. Mahoney, and he is going to give us a high school athletics update for the fall, the winter, and a spring preview. So take it away, Mr. Mahoney.
Thank you, Ms. Perdios. Good evening, everyone. Just as Ms. Perdios said, I'll just do a quick run through from our fall, winter, and just give a spring preview. We're about 3 weeks into the spring season at this point, so teams are underway. So looking back to our fall 2025 season, I'll start over at Quincy High School. We had a little close to 270 students participate across our 8 sports. And the levels that we offered were pretty standard from previous years. So football had our 3 levels, girls volleyball 3, the both soccers had 2 levels, boys golf 2 levels, cheerleading, and the cross countries had 1 level. We were fortunate to have 13 Patriot League All-Stars named from Quincy High fall season. 11 of those fall athletes were recognized by the Patriot Ledger and the Enterprise as All Scholastics for their achievements. Big season for our combined QNQ girls cross-country team. So they, in the dual meets in the regular season, won every meet. So they were 4-0. So they won the Fisher Division title. They advanced to the Patriot League Championship meet with the rest of the entire Patriot League of all 12 schools, and our girls finished first in that meet. They advanced to the MIA All-State meets where they finished 4th place, and then the rest of the team advanced to the even All-State meet of champions. So terrific season. Coach Hennessy does a great job with those girls. So hats off to him and his staff. Moving on, we had 2 of our fall sports at Quincy High qualify for the state tournament. So our girls volleyball team at Quincy High qualified. They earned the number 30 seed in Division 1, but then lost to the number 3 seed Shrewsbury 3-1. Our football team at Quincy High had a great season. They ended up hosting a playoff game for the first time in a while. So they were the number 7 seed in Division 2, but unfortunately were defeated in that game as well. Put on there the final records as well for reference from our regular season programs over at Quincy High. Continuing on to North Quincy High School in the fall season, we had little over 300 students participating across those 8 sports. So the programming at North, a couple different levels that were offered. So football typically had 3 levels. This year they could only offer 2 based on the participation. But our boys soccer program ended up offering 3 levels. So there's a little bit of a comparison there between the 2 sports. Traditionally, girls volleyball stuck with 3 levels. Girls soccer had 2, boys golf 2. Cheerleading had 2 levels at North Quincy, and then the cross-country programs are still 1. So 12 Patriot League All-Stars were awarded from our athletes at North Quincy High School in the fall. We had 2 of which were named Patriot League MVPs of the Fisher Division. So we had Jacqueline Manning, girls soccer player at North, and Maddie McGillicuddy, girls cross-country. Those both were recognized as MVPs for the 2nd consecutive year. So they had that same honor last year as juniors. Jackie also was recognized by the Boston Herald as an All-Scholastic for the 2nd consecutive year, and also got honorable mention by the Boston Globe. We had 12 fall athletes recognized by the Patriot Ledger and Enterprise for their achievements as All-Scholastics. Continuing with Maddie, she's had a tremendous high school career. In all of those races for cross-country, she finished first in those races, including the Patriot League Championship meet where she placed first. She's going to continue her cross-country track running career at UMass Lowell next year, so hats off to her. Wish her luck. Girls soccer also had a terrific season. First time in a while that they earned a playoff seed, and they were number 18, Division 2. They ended up winning their first round game against Canton, 1-goal game, I believe it was. Then they advanced to the round of 16, but lost to Longmeadow out in Longmeadow. North Quincy football also qualified for the state tournament. They earned the 13th seed in Division II, but then they were defeated by Winchester. Girls volleyball qualified for the state tournament. They were the 31 seed in Division II. They won their first match against Essex North Shore and then lost to Duxbury, the number 2 seed. Boys golf at North Quincy voted the Patriot League Fisher Division Team Sportsmanship Award, and our cheerleaders at North Quincy qualified for the regional championships. So very successful fall season for both high schools. A lot of good state tournament qualifiers and obviously individual runners too. So and I once again threw the final records in there from the fall season. I'll continue into the winter. We had 180 students at Quincy High School participating across our 12 sports that we offer at Quincy High. Those levels were basically the same traditionally. Boys basketball had 3 levels, girls basketball had 2. Our boys hockey offered 2 levels, and I'll highlight boys hockey just as an update. The last time we had met, we were in the process of exploring the opportunity of co-oping our boys hockey programs. That process went through for this past winter season. The numbers that we discussed with using some of the data from our Quincy Youth Arena folks pretty much was standard to what we were expecting to get for participants. So North Quincy High had 22 boys that signed up and played, and Quincy High had 11. So Quincy High definitely would have been in a really tough spot. So I appreciate the support of the superintendent, his leadership team, and the school committee for their support during that process, allowing us to move ahead with the co-op idea. I think it was a really good season for them. The games were extremely competitive. You'll see their record might not be the best on paper, but they did qualify for the state tournament. The Quincy High students haven't experienced the tournament in a while, and as I said, the games were much more competitive than previous seasons. So, and we continued to do offering the 2 levels as well. So we were able to give the JV full schedule of about 15 or so games. So I think it was a really beneficial experience for those individuals that participate in boys hockey. So thank you for the support on that. And the co-op situation for that is typically you'll apply for those on a 2-year basis. So we did apply as a 2-year basis. The MIA reviewed it and they offered us for just a 1 year for this past season. So the plan is to continue to move forward with the process and apply for that again for the next hopefully 2 seasons, and then continue to see where the numbers take us. So based on who we have graduating, coming back, and then our incoming 8th grade to 9th grade class, the numbers are going to be pretty consistent to what we had this year. So I don't hopefully foresee an issue with the approval of the co-op, so we're going to move and forge ahead with that. Backtracking a little bit, but so we had at Quincy High, we had 8 Patriot League All-Stars from our winter season. Boys basketball qualified for the MIA State Tournament, first time since 2018-19. Terrific season for Coach Ramponi and the boys over there. I think it might have been the first winning season since that year as well. So hats off to him and his staff. They made the state tournament. They hosted a prelim game. They ended up winning that and then advancing to the round of 32 before being defeated. But really positive outlook moving forward for that program. So thank you to him. Girls basketball continued to strive. Qualified for the state tournament again. They were a high seed. They were the number 11 seed in Division I. They hosted a playoff game, defeated Durfee, but then unfortunately lost to Natick, the 6th seed, in the round of 16. As I mentioned, boys hockey did qualify for the state tournament. They're in Division III, so they were the number 24 seed, and we ended up losing in the first round in an overtime game, 4-3. They were also voted that Team Sportsmanship Award within the Patriot League as well. Our girls hockey program, also Q&Q, they qualified for the state tournament for the first time in a while, and they earned the 21 seed, but unfortunately they lost as well to Canton in the first round. A few of our individual sports with track, swimming, and wrestling. We had a few of our athletes at Quincy High advance to the state from the all state level. So two of our wrestlers at Quincy High, they both placed 5th in their respective weight classes at the South Sectionals at Weymouth High, and then they were alternates at the all state tournament at the end of the year. Also, we had a few of our male and female swimmers that participated at MIT in the state championships, and then a few of our female indoor track athletes compete at the MIAA Division II championships, which is held at New Balance. So, and then through the final records on there as well for our winter programs at Quincy High. Moving on to North Quincy High, we had 265 students participating across our 12 sports. The levels that were offered were the same as what we've seen over the years: 3 levels of boys basketball, 2 levels of girls basketball, Q&Q boys hockey and girls hockey, so two levels of boys and 1 level of girls. Wrestling, indoor track, swimming, and ski all offered 1 level. They, on the other hand, had 18 Patriot League All-Stars come out of North Quincy High School from the winter season. Our girls basketball program continued to have a great season. The last few years have been really fun to watch that group. They won the Patriot League Fisher Division and then qualified for the state tournament, earning the number 9 seed. They won their first round game, and then they lost to Norwood in the round of 16. Continuing more on our Q&Q swimming and track, we had a lot of individual athletes that strive in those sports. So a lot of those individuals participated at the state level, Division I meets. And we had a few of them advance to the meet of champions in track specifically, Maddie once again, and then John Naku on the boys' side. Our girls at North Quincy, this 1600 sprint medley relay team, they qualified, and then they competed at the New Balance Nationals, which is held in Boston in New Balance. So that was a great honor for them to go there and compete against basically teams and schools around the whole U.S. So, and then our boys basketball program at North was voted the Patriot League Fisher Sportsmanship Award. Put the final records there as well for North Quincy High School from the winter season. And then looking at the spring preview, as I said, we're 3 weeks now into the season. Some of our programs have had their first games at this point. Just the games are pretty much starting up this week. First week dealt with some rain, so we weren't necessarily on the fields right away, but we made it work in the gymnasium and the turf, utilizing the turf fields at Veterans and Creedon. But the Parks Department has been great working with the fields, and our kids were out there last week. Baseball played a game last Friday, so fields are ready and the kids are out there. So, and then looking at participation numbers for the spring, those are the numbers there. So Quincy High has 271 students currently participating across the 11 sports, and North Quincy is a little bit up higher at 338. I did want to highlight just a few achievements from over the course of the school year so far. At North Quincy High School with our Learning Center students, it was year 2 of the Unified Basketball program. It's been really fun to watch those kids, the teachers that kind of run the whole thing, and our other sports programs showing up and supporting those students in the gym when we have a home game is pretty fun to watch. I know actually at Southwest they just started unified basketball as well. So, and I think there's a few teachers at Quincy High that have inquired with me about potentially the option of bringing unified to Quincy High. So, really fun to watch, like I said, and just the support is terrific. Some other highlights and events that our teams and our programs have put together. At Quincy High, the Roll Hats Weekend is a big success to kind of kick off the school year with the support of alumni, kind of centered around a full day at Veterans Stadium. And then our North Quincy football program does a salute to service game where they honor our veterans before their game. They pick a home game, and they wear special jerseys that are honoring service members from North Quincy High School. Just really fun and to see that appreciation. Quincy High School and the boys basketball program with both football and basketball did a first responders recognition, recognized our school resource officers, the police and fire in the city of Quincy, EMTs, things of that nature. We've also, a lot of our programs will do teacher and faculty and staff appreciation games where they'll recognize, or our seniors typically will pick a teacher or faculty member at the school that has made a positive influence of them, and they'll come out with them and be recognized before their game. We've also had a few of our programs that volunteered at Wreaths Across America at the cemetery. So it's good to see the teams getting out in the community as well. And then, as I mentioned briefly in the bullet points, had 2 Patriot League MVPs, 2 Fisher Division titles, and 10 of our programs qualified for the state tournament over the fall and the winter season. And we're hoping for more of those during the spring season. So that's pretty rough idea of where we're at. And I did include participation numbers just to kind of see it on paper, a little bit of a chart. I mentioned those numbers throughout the presentation, but the second piece is the number of unique participants. So that's like one student. So if you're a student that plays 3 sports, you're only counted once in that number. So Quincy High this school year, between the three seasons, has 479 students that have participated at some point over the course of this school year, and North Quincy has 576. The percentage, that's the rough percentage of what that is percentage-wise to school population. So we have over 1,000 students at some point during the school year across the district participating in an athletic program at either high school. So
That's great, Mr. Mahoney. Thank you so much for that, and congratulations to all the students and the coaches that are participating in all the fall and winter sports, and good luck to our spring sports students and coaches. So I have a couple questions, but I'll open it up to my colleagues if either of you guys have anything you want to say. Questions? One second. Yeah.
I've been concerned in the last few years about the format for state tournament. I don't know where we can go with this or how we can change it back to where it was, because it gives a false impression of how we're doing. You qualify with a 6-11-2 record for a state tournament.
Yep.
Or 7-12-1. I mean, that's not deserving of a state tournament berth. Back in the day when I played 100 years ago, it was 70%. You had to win 70% of your games to qualify, and that meant something. And it was much more difficult, obviously, to do that.
Yep.
Of course, the times were different too. My concern also is numbers at different sports. Now, I noticed that the football team at North only had 2 levels this year.
Yep.
Which is a first.
Yeah, since I've been around, for sure.
Right.
Yep.
And what was the freshman number?
So they roughly had, I have the number here. So across the program was a little bit below 60 total, but they only brought in about like 8 freshmen total. So Quincy was able to have a full freshman team. So I'm not sure, where, how many at the United, now that the youth programs combined too. Before it was obviously the 5 different neighborhoods. Now that they're also just one program now. So once you get that team and just split them, potentially losing a few to privates too.
Yeah.
So those numbers are definitely a low, especially as the season goes on in football. You're dealing with a lot of injuries, potential for
and that's why numbers are so
numbers.
important.
Right.
To get kids to participate. And I know that we were discussing it before we started our first meeting about how parents are not too crazy about their kids playing football anymore. And which is unfortunate, but that's their choice. My concern is the incoming class for North Quincy. Has that been extrapolated, or do you have any sense as to what the numbers are there? Because I'm looking at 2 years down the road.
Yeah.
For a game on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And whether or not that's going to be possible or not.
Yeah, it's certainly a thought that's been kind of circulating as well. But in terms of numbers, like we can probably certainly check in with the United folks. They're pretty well connected to both programs, and see kind of what we're expecting. What we typically see too is not everybody that plays United will come up either. Like we do recruit certain kids that first time putting a helmet on, but there is some hesitation, to your point, of potential injury, concussions, things of that nature. So, in the alternative, their boys soccer program is heavy, so maybe it's just the type of the kid that what they're playing in youth right now, and then when they're coming up, they're just sticking with that sport. So. We can look at the youth numbers for sure to kind of see the outlook similar to what we did with hockey. Yeah.
Right. And that was a great move
Yep.
to do that, because it afforded kids an opportunity to play
Yeah.
that otherwise wouldn't have been able to play if we had stayed the course
Yeah.
with having two teams. And again, injuries, like you said, take a toll during the season.
Yep.
And hockey and football particularly.
Yep.
So, and I'm looking at our combined teams. We have 5 combined teams at North and 5 combined teams at Quincy. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that trend is gonna continue. I mean, it's great that kids are playing.
Yep.
I think that's the important thing. But if you're trying to establish a program at that particular high school, is discouraging when, for example, what happened at North last year, they had 2 terrific freshman players, basketball, and they were plucked by the ASL.
Yeah.
They're gone. And that decimates a program. They went from a terrific record last year to 5 wins this year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just losing a couple of kids in a program makes a huge difference. Particularly when you have only 5 kids on the court at a time, or, I'm just concerned about our numbers overall and where we're going with certain sports, so.
Yeah,
Not to be a downer, but I'm just being a realist.
Sure. Yeah, I think the recent trend too is, I think the prep school piece is a huge issue. For years, it was like, we may lose some students to privates, unfortunately.
ABCI?
Yeah. but that is the issue, is the prep schools are coming in, in their sophomore year, and really looking at our athletes that are thriving a little bit. So if we can try to prevent that the best we can, we certainly will. We want them to stay with us. So to speak on the All-State tournament, Mr. Bergoli, in years past it was the 50%, for sectionals at this, and now it goes to the power rankings system. So it's forcing a little bit of different stuff too, from a coaching standpoint. Our coaches are now basically scheduling based on the power rankings too. So it puts them in a little bit of a dilemma. We in the Patriot League as athletic directors have voiced our opinion to MIA. Obviously, it's the full MIA decision, but within the Patriot League, we have a pretty unanimous stance on specifically to the point of the margin of victory part of it, where let's just pick basketball.
Can you explain that too?
Sure. Yeah. So the way the power ranking system works for the tournaments is, well, you can still qualify by getting 50%. So we strive for 10 wins to go 10-10, make the tournament. Great experience for a program that hasn't made it in a while. Then look at like girls basketball programs who have done really well the last few years. I think their goal is probably a little bit higher to strive, make the tournament, and then continue to advance as far as they can. As North Quincy, went to the Final Four last year and stuff. So now, when in the off season, they're scheduling harder because you get points for your opponent ranking as well. So some of our programs that might struggle, I usually work with the coaches in the off season with opponents that might make the most sense competitively rather than looking necessarily at the strength of the schedule. So I think we kind of base it on where the program stands. But so you get points from your opponent rating, and then within the game itself, you get more points for winning the game by a certain number. So
Certain number of points.
certain number of points. So in basketball, that number is 10. So if you win the game by 8, you should be happy you won by the game in general. But the fact that you didn't win by 10, there is that lingering thought in your mind as you're driving home as a coach, like we could have got one more point. So it's a topic amongst the ADs because we feel like, you know, you shouldn't have to change the style, the way you coach at the end of the game and make sure you win hockey by 3 goals instead of 2. So it takes away high school educational athletics out of it and focuses more on wins and the number of wins. So we within the Patriot League are very adamant against that. And within some sports, they've dropped that number. I think lacrosse might have been maybe 6 or 7 like last
7
year.
goals.
Yeah, and now it's down to 3. So, and hockey was like 3. I think they've talked about bringing it down to 2. So there's definitely topics within each sport, but on the grander scheme, I'm not sure if the switch to going back to sectional tournaments, Mr. Bergoli, has been talked about, but I know within like the power rating system and stuff, there's definitely conversations being had.
And just 2 other things. What that also does, when you have the pressure to win by X amount of points, it doesn't allow the kids, like,
At the end of the
you carry 15 kids on a team. So maybe you're going to get 7 or 8 kids in the game.
Yeah.
What about the other 7 kids? They have to sit there because we have to win by a certain amount of points? The MIA should be ashamed of themselves for putting that on us. And our kids, and our coaches.
Yeah.
Because it's not fair to kids. And that's what it's supposed to be about.
Yep.
Right? When I coached, that's what it was about. And I forgot, the venues. I mean, girls' basketball had to go to Long Meadow.
Oh, the travel, yeah. The travel has been, there's been certain games where we've had to travel distances for sure, yeah.
Does anyone know where Long Meadow is? I do, because I went to UMass. But
It's about 2 hours, yeah.
it's 2+. And if that's on a school day, school night, you're getting home at what time? And then having to perform in class the next day and do your homework, and I don't know. The MIAA, frankly, is a money-making organization, in my opinion, and they're run by private school guys who came out of private school. You see very few public school administrators in that organization. And that's where it lies, in my opinion. That's my opinion. Now, someone else may have a different opinion, and I respect that, but having been doing this for over 40 years, I've just seen when the Eastern Mass Principals Association ran the tournament, it was a much better product. It was much better for kids, academically and scholastically. And we've gone the college model.
Yeah.
And we've forgotten that we're in high school. So.
Thank you, Mr. Bergoli. Mrs. Cahill, do you have any
Yes.
questions? All right.
I would say that you should probably call the MIAA. Give them your opinion.
I had to go that word.
I think to your point, right? So what you're doing is changing it from being just an educational sports system to
Yep.
being like a college level system, which, and I had girls that played club sports when they were growing up and in high school and everything. And then they played high school sports, so they were on club and played high school. And sometimes they'd get a little frustrated because they'd be playing with kids who maybe never, kicked a soccer ball or something.
Yeah.
And we'd have the discussion that they were fortunate enough to have that, but for kids in high school or middle school and high school, it's an opportunity for these kids who never had an opportunity to play a sports because they maybe were interested, and gives them a chance to play.
Yep.
But if you're going to be putting this kind of pressure on kids that they have to, again, making all these extra points to be
Yep.
able to participate, it changes the whole fabric of how the games are played. Which, to Mr. Bergoli's point, is unfortunate for, because if you have kids who don't have the access to a different level of sports,
Yep.
this is where we're supposed to be giving them an opportunity to get a skill set in a sport and be on a team and all that. So
Right.
it's disappointing to see that. My question to you, and I think we had the discussion before, is, one, have we had any opportunity to ask parents? Remember, I think last year we talked about
Yeah.
having some kind of an assessment at the end of a season.
Yeah.
Did we do any of that?
So we're looking at developing a survey. We were going to do it at the end of the school year, but if we want to shift to kind of doing by season, we can certainly do that. Kind of talk about like experience in general. Ask for some comments about how we can improve the programming moving forward. So kind of more looking at like a Google form doc type of situation. So we're
I
looking
think
at that for sure.
I think that would be good. I think it gives parents an opportunity to just kind of give you a little bit of reflection of what they think for
Yeah.
the season.
Sure.
Not necessarily about the coaches, but
Yeah.
just maybe about just
Just
in general,
experience.
the experience.
Sure.
And are we doing anything, do most of our coaches do something off-season in terms of skill training and fitness and,
Yeah.
anything like that?
Yeah. So I know that a lot of the coaches try to get them involved as much as they can in the off season. Obviously, without trying to interfere as much with maybe their current season. So a lot of the programs will do a lot of summer leagues that are pretty popular. Weightlifting in the summer as well. And then as they advance during the school year, our programs will like to use the weight room at both high schools. There's also some other programs too that will maybe go off-site for certain potential strength and conditioning that they'll use. But yeah, we certainly encourage them to keep in touch with our student athletes and keep their skill work going. Another popular thing too is just like if the gyms are open after school, like the kids, if they want to come down, shoot hoops or get in the weight room or whatever, like we're happy to do that. Keep it open for them rather than you shooting hoops outside or something
Yeah.
like that. So
the gyms are open
yeah,
for the
yep.
kids.
Yeah, as long as like if volleyball's on the road and we don't have to have softball and baseball come inside for the rain or whatever, there's kids.
But even in the
getting
summer?
subs- Yep,
Like in
yep,
the summer?
yep.
And would the coaches be given like maybe a workout or have the captains running
Yep.
practices or
Yep.
games and stuff during the summer?
Yeah, so
Keep the kids engaged?
Yeah, that's typically what we'll have the coaches do. There's only so much within MIA standards that they can do sports specific. They can't do sports specific stuff, but when it comes to strength and conditioning, they're totally within rules. So we definitely encourage them in the summer months for sure to get in the weight room or even just
Running.
if it's soccer, get to the field and put them through a conditioning workout and whatnot. So that's the hope.
And that's good for me. And the other question, the other thing that I thought was great was you had 1,055 unique participants in sports in
Yeah.
the high school, so that our high school population is about 3,000 kids, do we have? So it's about a third
30,
of
yeah.
the kids? Okay.
And I compared it to last year. I think North Quincy was up from unique participants by about 2%, but Quincy stayed pretty consistent to where we were at last year. So we kind of look at that number as a whole, and then look at each individual program to see kind of where they're at. So
That's good. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bergoli.
Coming back to me. Back when I started coaching soccer, back in the 70s, we were in the suburban league and we were getting our heads handed out to us. And Jim McGuire was the coach over at Quincy High School and I was a coach at North. And we decided to come together with Bill Flynn from the Patriot Ledger and we formed Quincy Youth Soccer. And that's how that was initiated, because our programs were getting absolutely destroyed, both on the field and then mentally for the kids. I mean, when you go into a game, you know you're gonna lose to Brockton 9-0. There's no fun in that. So that's what we did back then.
Yeah.
And you talked about the weight room. There's a different standard for each high school regarding the weight room. I know it's been discussed many times, and George Burke was a great philanthropist, and he took care of Quincy High School, and that weight room at Quincy High School is second to none. You go to North Quincy High School, it's like we're back in the dark ages. And I don't think that's, I think we need to look at that at some point to help bring it up to a standard that's legit, so the kids can really use it and compete, and not have to go to the Y or Planet Fitness to work out. So,
Yep.
thank you, that's it.
Thank you. All right. So echoing some of my colleagues' comments, definitely the having the parent survey kind of after each sport, I think that would be great. I mean, I was thinking about it kind of specifically for the combined boys hockey team,
Yep.
just to really get their feedback. Parents were really involved in that process. They were very communicative to us when you were considering combining. So hearing from them how that went would be really, really helpful to understand how they feel about the season. And but also all the sports would be really great
Yep.
to hear from. So I think that would be excellent. The open gym, when you kind of said kids could go in and shoot hoops, does that have to be coordinated by like a captain, or can kids go in anytime sort of and do that?
Yeah, usually the captains will come pop in, but we ask that there be supervision too. So there's just an adult there, so the custodians aren't like worrying about who's in where or whatnot. But yeah, typically it's on like kind of a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. Like right now we have the basketball coaches very respectable about, we have boys volleyball in season, but when the opportunity is there, can we get our kids in there to get some opportunities to keep them going,
Okay.
because if we have, I think there's a handful of strictly just basketball kids, and they want to keep playing instead, to Mr. Bergoli's point, instead of going to the Y or, where it might be jam-packed and they can't do as much. So
Right. I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't just
Sure.
students could
Yeah,
just go
no, just
anytime.
open-
It's,
yeah,
right,
no,
so
no,
it's more
yep.
of a coordinated effort.
Yes, correct.
And having unified basketball at Quincy High, I think that would be fantastic. If we have the bandwidth to expand that program, that would be really great. I'd love to see that. Can you talk a little bit about, I know for the spring preview, you listed the sports that are coming up, but can you talk a little bit about the sailing program? Because I don't think that one's quite off the ground, and maybe just an update to families who may be wanting to participate in that.
Sure. Yeah, so we're still looking for a coach. We had a meeting with a prospective candidate this week. So the coach from last year just moved on for personal reasons and to go to their profession. So unique sport is sailing, so there's not many folks that you can kind of convince to potentially take it on. And then there's certain certifications that they need as well, where we will sail out of community boating in Boston, where the races are and things of that nature. So their folks within community boating require certain certificates specifically for sailing. So we're still hopeful, like in the off season and whatnot, leading up to the season, all registrations and paperwork and league dues and all that we're taken care of. So we're hopeful that we can kind of get the ground, get the ball rolling to have something. The kids have been great. They've had a couple kind of captains meetings to see how many kids are still interested, and it's a handful, but we still want to offer that if we can. But like I said, we're at I guess we obviously we need a coach that's qualified to have their certificates. We can certainly ask like teachers in the sport of like tennis, let's say, that if we ever needed one, we can convince them to maybe coach it. But with the certificates, it kind of becomes a little bit harder for us. So, and as I said, it's a unique sport. So finding the right coach, I guess, can be difficult too. So
Right, thank you for that. So are the kiddos that did sign up, are they getting any kind of, is there conditioning? Is there anything that they're doing right now, or are they just kind of in a holding pattern?
Yeah, they're kind of in a holding at this point, but as I said, there's 2 meetings within the last couple of weeks just to kind of get idea of where we're at, give them an update on the season, and then within their own sailing communities, because some of them are really, really into it, trying to push those networks and see if there's anybody out there that might want to take us on, like help us out, basically.
And if we don't end up finding a coach, those fees and stuff will be returned
course,
to families? Okay, that's great. And then I think I wanted to address Mr. Bergoli's concern about MAA, I totally agree. I think that the kiddos, winning by a certain number, it really does promote having those kiddos that sit on the bench, and that doesn't help. It doesn't help them get any better. It's a waste of time of them sitting on the bus, sitting on the bench, and their confidence just plummets when they're not good enough to go on there game after game after game. And they've paid the user fee, and they're there for practices, and it's things that time away from other things that they could be doing and exploring other opportunities. So definitely, I would love to, encourage the MIAA to go back to something that doesn't use that broad spectrum of how many goals or how many points you need to have to win.
Sure.
And then my last question was batting cages at Pond Street. And I know I asked Dave Murphy about this, so it might be more his arena than yours. But do you have any update on when those may be replaced? Because those are in really, really poor shape. And I know the baseball team's using those, and they were supposed to be replaced and leading up to the season, and they still haven't been. I didn't know if you had any information about that or any way to.
I don't have an
get us
update, but it's certainly been mentioned to the parks as well. So typically, obviously Commissioner Murphy and Paul Doherty is who we work with through the Parks Department. So whenever coaches give us some stuff to report back, we certainly do that. But yeah, I was over there as well. There's a lot of holes in there. and
Yeah,
stuff,
it would be
so,
great if we
yeah.
could push that a little bit more to
Sure.
kind of get those updated for those kiddos on that team. So I think that's it for me. Anyone else? Okay.
You talked about that last year.
I did talk about that. Yes. Yep.
I understand there was a tree in the
The
batting
bullpen?
cage.
There was a tree in the batting cage that I guess got moved.
Oh, it's moved, yes.
I don't know if it got moved or not.
It's
but
moved, yeah.
It's moved,
Yeah.
but
It was
the-
in the
Yeah.
the bullpen.
Yes,
So
exactly.
you'd have to throw through the tree. Mr. Bergoli, what?
Well, it works in a curveball.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Yep, Mrs. K.
Talking about the football and what we had to go through for the hockey season, we kind of were on a time crunch, weren't we, for the hockey? Should we be kind of being proactive in terms of looking at our numbers and seeing if it's a process that we maybe have to start doing so in time for a season? Like,
Yeah.
it's obviously not going to be next year, right?
Right.
But maybe the year after.
Yeah.
After the fall, we maybe have to start thinking about it.
Yeah, that would probably be a
and
good
seeing.
timeline. Those obviously, if it's a new co-op, then we would have to go through the same process with approval from the league and then from the district MIA level. I think that number might be 30 is the minimum number for a football team, which at that point you're literally only looking at a Vars 1 level.
Yeah. I'm not a proponent, North Quincy people out there. I want everyone to know we want to continue. We'll just have to have the alumni come and play each other, but just in case, I think we have to kind of keep it in the forefront.
Yeah.
So we're not in a place where we're at the last minute trying to push it through and not, in time for another season.
Sure.
Right? Okay, that's good.
All right, everyone good? All right, so with that, thank you, Mr. Mahoney, and we'll
Thank you.
adjourn the athletics subcommittee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you all.
All right.
Okay, welcome to the Special Education Subcommittee. Members of the public, wait, where is that? What am I reading? Sorry, bear with me today, first time. This subcommittee meeting is not a meeting of the whole school committee. Therefore, per open meeting law, only subcommittee members may discuss, deliberate, and vote on matters before the subcommittee. The subcommittee members are myself, Tom Leung, and Courtney Perdios. On the agenda tonight, I'm excited to hear about this, the Special Education Rights and Responsibility presentation by Ms. Graham and Ms. Leary.
Thank you, Mrs. Campbell, and thank you for having us here this evening. We are here to present our annual Parents' Rights and School Responsiveness presentation. Presenting with me this evening are Jennifer Leary, Special Education Coordinator, Corinne Matthews, Special Education Team Administrator, Katie Carey, Special Education Team Administrator, and Lisa Chan Iannetta, Special Education Team Administrator. So every year, parents of students with disabilities are provided with their procedural safeguards. This is a document that outlines the legal protections offered to students with disabilities and their families under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. This presentation is our annual overview of what those protections are. The goal of this presentation is to provide information so that parents can understand their child's rights and the special education process. Collaboration between family and school personnel will be enhanced, and parents and school personnel will participate in the special education matters as knowledgeable partners. That is definitely one thing that we have spoken about quite often recently as the new IEP format rolled out, that it is truly imperative that parents are knowledgeable partners in the special education process with us. I am now going to turn this over to Lisa.
Hi, we're going to talk a little bit about special education law. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is also known as IDEA. It has 6 principles. Number 1, first, is parent and student participation. The second is FAPE, free and appropriate public education. The third is appropriate evaluation. The fourth, individualized education programs, IEPs. The fifth is least restrictive environment. And the fifth is the procedural safeguards. Corinne and Jen will talk about this in further detail towards the end of the presentation. In Massachusetts, special education law was also previously known as Chapter 766. It is under the authority of the Department of Education, Elementary and Secondary Education, otherwise known as DESE. These laws govern much of what we do in special education. The purpose is to ensure that students who are eligible for special education services are supported by their individual educational needs in the least restrictive environment. These laws also help protect students with disabilities on IEPs. When is a student eligible for special education? A student is eligible for special education if the following 3 things are true. First, the student has 1 or more disabilities. The student is not making effective progress in school as a result of their disability or disabilities. And lastly, the student requires specially designed instruction in order to make effective progress in school. Next, Katie's going to talk about the 13 different types of disabilities that may adversely affect educational progress that are defined by state and federal regulations.
Good evening, and thank you, Lisa. This slide provides the 13 disabilities that affect a student's educational progress. The first one is autism. It's a developmental disability that significantly affects verbal and nonverbal communication as well as social interactions. Students identified with this disability are taught both in and out of our district. They can vary in special education service needs from full inclusion to resource room, pull-in, push-out, therapies, substantially separate programming. Additionally, these students are out of district at a collaborative or also a private setting. Our RDLC and CARES program staff specialize in this disability and track progress, with work samples, progress reports, and data collection collected daily. Next is the developmental delay. That identifies students that are 3 to 9 years old whose learning capacity is limited, impaired, or delayed in the areas of expressive and receptive language, cognitive abilities, physical functioning, social and emotional or self-help skills. The next one is the intellectual impairment. And these students have difficulty performing cognitive tasks, functions, and problem-solving skills. They're significantly limited or impaired. These students demonstrate a slower rate of learning, a little bit disorganized patterns of learning, and difficulty with adaptive behavior and/or difficulty understanding abstract concepts. The students with these disabilities require a slower rate of learning. Our newly opened RDLC and Special Needs Learning Center teachers and paraprofessionals and professionals demonstrate this through a multisensory, concrete, real-life educational opportunities for our students. The next 3 disabilities were all sensory impairments. They include hearing impairments, visual impairments, and deafblindness. These disabilities can affect a student's communication, development, and educational progress. These students' special education services are provided with the assistance of a teacher of the deaf, educational audiologist, an orientation and mobility specialist, or a teacher of the visually impaired. These specialists work with the general education and special education staff to provide curriculum both auditorily and visually so that the students can access curriculum with their grade level peers. Multiple disabilities can also be added here. These students have been diagnosed with 1 or more of the Massachusetts defined disabilities. Next is the neurological impairment. It's defined as the limited or impaired nervous system. This affects the use of memory, cognitive functioning, sensory and motor skills, speech and language, organization skills, or basic life functions. One example of this disability is traumatic brain injury. Next is the emotional impairment. It's the inability to learn that cannot be explained by an intellectual, sensory, or health factors, and the inability to maintain satisfactory relationships with either peers or teachers. This includes students that have a pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression and is demonstrated over a long period of time, and it adversely affects their learning. The Quincy Public Schools counselors and teachers in the district use best practice strategies such as a circles curriculum to address these emotional needs, to further develop strategies to regulate these emotions. A communication impairment includes students who have limited, impaired, or delayed ability to express and/or receptive language in areas of speech, articulation, and/or voice. Also, conveying or understanding the spoken, written, or symbolic languages. An example of this disability is either stuttering or impaired articulation, and again, this impedes their educational performance. Next is your physical impairment, and they are physical, that affects their physical capacity to move, coordinate actions, and perform physical activities. One example of this disability is cerebral palsy or impairment that adversely affects any performance in school. Next is your health disability, and a health impairment includes chronic or acute health problems such as asthma, attention deficit disorder, diabetes, epilepsy, heart conditions, or anything that will affect their learning. The final disability is the specific learning disability, or also known as SLD. It is a term used for a disorder or for one or more of the basic understanding of language, spoken, written, and may manifest in an imperfect ability to listen, speak, read, write, spell, or do math calculations. Examples of this would be brain injury or dyslexia. Students with this disability struggle with classes that have heavy reading requirements and benefit from support in all academic areas and special education services provided on their service delivery on their IEP. Thank you, and now Corinne will present what is special education.
Okay, what is special education? Special education is specially designed instruction to meet the unique needs of students who are found eligible and/or related services that are necessary to access and make progress in the general curriculum. Okay, now we'll talk about the timeline for evaluation. The first step is that a consent to test would be sent to the parents or guardians to sign to give us permission to evaluate. Once that is signed, we have 30 school days to administer the evaluations. Once those are complete, a team meeting would be held to determine if a student is found eligible for special education services. If they are found eligible, the team will create an IEP, and the IEP would be sent home within 5 school days from that meeting. So overall, there are 45 school days to evaluate, have the meeting, and send out the IEP to the parent to be reviewed and signed. Okay, now we're going to talk about the 6 principles of special education. Principle number 1 is parent and student participation. Parents have the right to participate in the special ed planning and decision-making. Special education is student-focused, so students are expected and encouraged to participate once they turn 14 years old. The district is obligated to make the effort to ensure that parents and students participate. We do our best to remove barriers such as offering virtual meetings and rescheduling if a time doesn't work. Okay, principle number 2 is free and appropriate public education, also known as FAPE. Free means that the district provides an appropriate education at no cost to the parent or family. Appropriate means that the services and placement are sufficient to enable the student to make progress in education in meeting IEP goals and benchmarks. Public means that it's provided by the school district or under the direction of the school district. And education means that students with who are eligible for special education receive education from preschool to grade 12 or age 22 if needed. And this includes extracurricular activities such as sports or clubs. Principle 3 is appropriate evaluation. So this includes initial evaluations to determine eligibility for special education, as well as 3-year reevaluations once they are found eligible. We use individualized assessments as well as non-discriminatory assessments. The evaluations include many tools and strategies, including information from parents. And Jem will continue to talk about these principles.
Okay, thank you. Principle number 4 is the Individualized Education Program. This is a written document that outlines student needs. The student and parent concerns and vision for the future are truly emphasized in the new IEP and are the very first thing that we talk about. The document itself also explains student strengths and how their disability impacts their access to the general education curriculum. The IEP also includes SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. They identify specific objectives to achieve the goal and who is responsible for assisting the student in achieving those objectives. The IEP also provides a list of services provided, location of those services, amount of time the student will receive them, and who is responsible for providing those services. There's also a separate listing for extended school year services when appropriate. Principle number 5 is the least restrictive environment. Our goal in the special education department is always to provide access to the general education as much as possible. We think long and hard about why we would remove a student from the general education environment. We do not remove students from the general education classroom solely because of a need for modifications and accommodations. Sometimes this means interventionists may push into the general education classroom to help support students there. Removal from the general education only occurs when the nature and severity of the disability require specialized instruction that cannot be provided in a general education classroom. A move to a more restrictive classroom will only occur when we have exhausted all other options. Special education students are first general education students, and then we support them in the areas where they require it. And principle number 6 is the procedural safeguards. As Julie mentioned earlier, this is a document that's sent home to all families once per school year. Families are required to receive written notice regarding all IEP activities. So this includes meeting invitations, evaluation consent forms, and then after the meeting, we write letters home about what was discussed. Parents have the right to consent to or reject all or part of what is being proposed. This includes evaluations, services, and placements. And it applies to both initial services or any changes that happen over time. The school cannot evaluate or provide services for a child without written parent consent, and parents can revoke their consent to any portion of services at any time. When team members disagree on any proposed changes, then the term is that we stay put to the last accepted IEP and continue those services while we work through the process. Obviously, we don't want to have disagreements with families, and we work really hard to try to make accommodations and changes to best support our students and ensure that both the school staff and the families agree to what's being provided. But occasionally, there will be times when parents in school are not able to reach an agreement. In these cases, for the protections of the parents and the students, the problem resolution system, mediation, and due process procedures are used. This includes contacting the Office of Quality Assurance and the Board of Special Education Appeals. Going through this process is always a last resort. We want to try everything possible not to reach this point, but this process is in place to assist in solving problems by a neutral party. The timelines that we referenced earlier are in place to ensure that the school completes all their tasks and the parents receive information in a timely manner. All student records are confidential, and staff receives training on this every year. Information on a student is only shared with staff members who need to know that information, and the information is only shared with outside providers, such as doctors or therapists, with written parental consent. And finally, parents have the right to request copies of evaluation reports 2 days prior to the IEP meeting upon request. And on the evaluation consent form is a spot for parents to check off that they would like those reports in advance.
And that's the end of our presentation. Do we have any questions?
That presentation. It's always good to get a refresher on this information. My first question is, can you highlight or draw attention to any big changes from the information that you provided last year? And if you see anything kind of on the horizon related to perhaps state or federal changes that might affect you.
Sure, I can speak to those. So one of the big changes, it was actually a pretty significant change, was a change to the timelines. Previously, it was that school districts had the full 45 days and then time to send out the IEP, where now the sending out of the IEP is included in that time frame. So now the school district needs to convene a team within 40 days, and then they have 5 school days to get out that IEP. So that was a pretty significant change for us. Just a little shift in thinking. It's absolutely fine. It was just a little shift, especially to those of us that have been at this for a really long time. Coming up on the horizon, we do anticipate that there's going to be some changes in what is referred to as timeout spaces, which is where students are removed from their classroom. It is something that is kind of new and evolving, and I feel like every time I talk to the Department of Ed, things are changing. But we do anticipate that they'll have final guidance for us in August.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
One other question. Can you tell us more about, I guess, principles related to access? How does the team think about improving access to special education, to, let's say, underserved communities or maybe historically disadvantaged ones?
Sure. So that is actually part of the principles, is we do not discriminate based on any of those things, that we truly look at all factors that go into what our students' needs, especially when we're looking at our assessment tools and the information that we're gathering, where we do look at all factors of who a student is and their background, and ensure that we are approaching all of our students as equitably as possible.
May
Thank
I
you.
comment a little, Julie, too? The eligibility form, so after you test a student, there's a flow chart that you go through with questions to determine whether a student's eligible for special education. And the specific learning disability form says right on it that delays in whatever area you're looking at are not due to economic disadvantage, speaking another language in the home environment. It very specifically lists out those kinds of areas that may be discriminated against, so that you're not calling a student who has had limited access, labeling them with a disability, when maybe their struggles in school are more due to limited access.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good job, Kate. Quick question on, you guys do a great job every year. This presentation is great. It's great that we do it every year. How do families, if we could just remind everyone, do families get this when their child's determined to be eligible for services? Do they receive this or a packet of this information? They don't have to look on a website somewhere and find it. It's given to them?
So
Is that
they don't
correct?
necessarily get this presentation, but they do get, the Department of Education has an actual document that we send out that is called Procedural and Parental Safeguards. Every school distributes it a little bit differently, but it is a mandate that the families have to get it at least one time per year. So some schools send it out at the beginning of the school year just to ensure that everyone's gotten it. And then if a student is found eligible at the initial process, they would then send it out then. Some schools send it out when they are reviewing the IEPs every year and sending out the IEPs. Every school does it a little bit differently. And one thing that is, speaking of equity, is that Department of Education does offer us the document translated in every possible language that we could need. So we simply go on the DZ website, click the translated version, and that's able to be shared with families.
That's great. And do you find that to be kind of easily digestible. I know when things go from our district, I think that they're very understandable by families. I think it's worded in a way that's very supportive and very Quincy specific. But do you find that document to be sufficient, or do you think that basically my concern is just that families know that they have the right to participate, they have the right to refuse, they have the right to question, they have the right to ask for things, and just making sure that the language around that is understandable enough, and it's not kind of legalese that they might have to not, that they might miss.
Sure.
And that is that kind of, do you feel that the document we give them is?
I think the DZ document can be a little bit dense, but we do ensure that at the IEP meeting, when they are talking about what are the family's options, that we do break it down in language that is more easily understood. We have also done this presentation for the CPAC, so that if families do have questions, they can certainly reach out to them as well.
Okay, that's great. Yep. Thank you so much.
I will just say that I so appreciate the whole, like, the field of special ed, all that you do. The work is,
Thank you.
it's a lot, right? And from the rights perspective, I feel having, that in my experience in this system, I've been given it so many times that I'm almost like, okay. And I also would say that I think that people generally take the time to make sure that I'm understanding, with no deference to my own professional background. I think people generally make the assumption that this is the first time you're seeing this. So at least that has been anecdotally my experience. And I thank you for this presentation, and I'm always so grateful for the work that you all do, and it's just such critical work for all the children and families, so thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Do you want to ask if they're here?
Next on the agenda is CPAC. Are they?
So in speaking to Mrs. Wood earlier, she was not sure if they were going to be able to attend this evening, and it would appear that they were not able to attend.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So then I guess the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.